Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we have the latest from the live radar, run for the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. It is remaining very unsettled throughout this working week, but as we head into next weekend it could stay unsettled, but it will be turning much warmer, if not hot, across parts of southern and eastern England. We are looking at temperatures widely into the mid-20s, and as I said, could even get up to 30 degrees down across the southeast. I haven't said though it's going to be dry. We are still expecting there to be low pressure nearby, so there is quite a high expectation, as we've sort of spoken about in the last few videos, of some quite big thunderstorms in places. So although yes, turning much warmer, if not hotter, to start June, it could be very energetic with a lot of storms around. We're starting to see hints on that in the latest UKV. You really only have the first kind of day of that hotter spell that's next Saturday, but in the next couple of days we should have a lot more data and we'll be able to look at that in a lot more detail. Then over to have a look at the latest GFS, GM, ECMWF and the Ensemble to see what is in store for early June. That kind of hot, thundery and unsettled pattern is looking likely to continue. It doesn't mean it's going to be consistent throughout the first kind of 10 days of June, but we could see multiple rounds of hot plumes and storms. It does look like this high pressure to the east and the south, low pressure to the west and the north is going to kind of set up, and it is generally going to have those sort of outcomes. So we'll look at that in more detail in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy the videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Now if you start on the live radar, we've got another batch of rain moving through this evening. We're in this around 8 PM. You can see a big wall of rain is heading through Wales, northwest England and western Scotland. They've got a bit of bits and bobs of rain elsewhere, lots of thick cloud, light on and off showers. Progressively this rain will become a bit more widespread, and we will see heavy rain for all overnight tonight. We have got this band of squally rain here across parts of Northern Ireland, and that is just a recipe for more squally bands of precipitation moving through tonight. So for all those areas across Northern England and Scotland, there could be some really torrential rain, even a bit of thunderstorm activity out there overnight tonight. We can already see evidence of this, a little squall feature there developing across Northern Ireland. So a very lively evening, not for all, but for many. And we are all going to wake up tomorrow morning with quite a lot of rain having fallen. Fortunately though, as we actually head into daytime tomorrow, most of this rain will have cleared. So we are going to see a lot of rain tonight in the next kind of 12 hours or so. But by tomorrow lunchtime, majority of it should have cleared. Now, if you look at the temperatures this evening, you see it's not a particularly warm day, much colder out there with all the cloud and the rain around, but in the best spots, just about getting into the high teens, but most are below average. Now, if you head over to the latest UKV now, you can see all of that rain is clearing through this evening, and by the early hours of Tuesday, to be honest, it will have cleared in the next kind of 6 to 8 hours or so. And as we head into Tuesday daytime, the majority of that heavy rain will have cleared, but by the early afternoon and lunchtime, another batch of precipitation moving through. So the timings have shifted a little bit there. I know I said a minute ago that we'll hopefully clear that rain by the morning. It does clear by the morning, but another batch is arriving a little bit earlier than it was showing yesterday, and we actually have rain arriving once again around lunchtime into the early afternoon before that clears into the evening. So lots of on and off batch of rain here, a little dry spot during tomorrow morning, but by the afternoon into the evening, once again, more heavy rain moving in. Into Tuesday evening, a band of heavy thundery showers could develop, nothing too extreme, but nonetheless could be pretty lively in a few spots. And progressively into Wednesday, a day of sunshine and showers, so drier there, but still could be unsettled in a few spots. Generally speaking, Wednesday night looks pretty dry, but into early hours of Thursday, look at this, heavy rain arrives around that 3 to 6 AM point for many northern and western areas, giving some really heavy stuff or eventually clears away. Thursday, another day of sunshine and showers, but hopefully a lot drier. And then into Friday, we start to see the wind direction shifting and more of a southerly wind develops. And as we head into Saturday, showers more in the west, but they could develop eastwards at times. And you can start to see some thunderstorms developing. Nothing too huge, no major outbreaks at this stage for next Saturday, the final day of May. But the trigger is starting to appear from the west. That's this low pressure system, and the warmth, the heat has arrived. We see that in the upper air temperatures. The very warm air mass in the southeast is pushed in, low pressure in the west is arriving, And we are about to potentially see the perfect storm for thunderstorms. Cape is also building in the east. As I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see some big explosive activity through Saturday evening and into Sunday. We'll have to wait and see what the latest UKV shows in the next day or so. There is going to be a lot of chopping and changing, but we are just about getting towards that time frame. In the next day or so, we'll be able to have a look at these thunderstorms that we've spoken about over the past few days in a lot more detail. But you can just about see a few of those storms starting to take off at 3 p.m. next Saturday, but could see more through the evening and especially into Sunday. With the absence of thunderstorms at 3 p.m. there, it actually means the temperatures are going to be a lot higher more widely. So kind of get that trade-off. We could see more thunderstorms, lower temperatures, could see less thunderstorms like this UKV is showing, but much more widespread high temperatures. Now, as we progress into Tuesday, temperatures widely mid-teens, so pretty disappointing as that rain arrives into the early afternoon. And then as we head into Wednesday, temperatures a bit higher with a bit of more of a dry pattern there across England and Wales. 22 degrees could be the peak. Same for Thursday, could be seen 23 or 24. Friday, again, maybe up to 24, 25, 26 as those temperatures start to jump up. And then Saturday, look at that, widely mid-20s up towards 27, 28 or even 29 there for the last day of May. So much, much hotter there. And we'll have to wait and see what the following days have in store. As I said, expect a lot of chopping and changing. So I know one UKV run at this stage is going to have all the answers. But yeah, I'll be very interested to see tomorrow's video when we do have a lot more of the weekend in the time frame. But yeah, it could be very hot, but very explosive at the same time next weekend. Now, if you look at the latest GFS, we can see the setup starting to build over the coming days. That high pressure to our east, low pressure to our west, southerly winds appearing there into next weekend with this big hot plume, and that combination really takes off through Saturday, Sunday into Monday, and that's where we could see the most activity as that sort of sweep through. It's not just one batch of potential storms. You see another southerly flow re-emerges in the following week. Again, the 10 or 15 degree isotherm could arrive and again gets pushed away by low pressure systems. So it's not all the time going to be hot and thundery, but there could be numerous batches of these southerly plumes before low pressure sweeps through. A better way to view this is if we put on the temperature deviation. You can see into next weekend this big plume of orange across much of France and southeast England. That's that hot spell. Cool air sweeps in behind for a few days, and then the warmth builds once again, and then we see another cool air mass sweep through. So that kind of recurring theme could be appearing here for early June, and as I said, could be very undulating temperatures, but also very undulating precipitation as well, with some days that could be absolutely horrific with big storms and heavy batches of precipitation. Now, if you check out the latest GM, again, very similar. That southerly flow arriving for next weekend with that low pressure squeezing through Sunday and Monday. And then again, around day 10, could be setting up another southerly push. You can see that very warm air is just to our south starting to push in. So again, I have to keep a close eye on it, but GM is very similar to the GFS with these multiple batches of southerly or southwesterly winds bringing some very warm conditions at times. They're into early June, as I said, not lasting all too long, not persistent, but could be up and down for a long period of time. And finish by looking at the latest ECMWF, broadly very similar. Those southerly winds potentially arriving into next weekend, and then again oscillating between high pressure and low pressure. And you can see a kind of optimum storm pattern develops here. Southeasterly wind, perhaps the air mass isn't quite as hot as we can see, but with low pressure just out to our west. If we do zoom in, you can see we'd expect to see some big storms triggering along these isobars. So very interesting again from the ECMWF here, and expect to see very similar surface outcomes to those other runs. So pretty strong agreement once again from the latest operational runs. Now, after you finish by looking at the latest ensembles, a little bit undulating over the next kind of 2, 3, 4 days, but into next weekend you can see a visible peak here, a good 5, 6, 7 degrees above average, up towards the low teens. Does drop off quite quickly into Monday, Tuesday, but that's as that low pressure system sweeps through, and could be a lot of heavy rain associated with that cold front. Beyond that, slightly cooler for a few days, but then another peak of Temperatures appearing there from around the 5th, 6th to around the 10th of June. That's where we could see another southerly push. So southerly push there around the 31st, 1st, 2nd of June, slightly cooler for a few days, and then another potential southerly push with storms developing. So again, we'll have to wait and see exactly how this does develop, but you can see that sort of recurring pattern that I've spoken about during this video starting to appear here on the ensembles. We see this on the sea level pressure, slightly lower pressure at the moment, that's why it's unsettled, slightly higher pressure as that heat arrives, low pressure as that system moves through, and then again up and down through the first half of June. And then if we look at the 2 meter temperatures, big spike appearing there next weekend, probably into the high 20s, if not 30 degrees. Again, not picking up on here on the ensembles because of the low resolution, but you can see the visible spike there, dropping for a few days and then spiking once again. So a typical undulating pattern appearing for early June. And if we finish by looking at the latest ECMWF ensembles, broadly it is relatively similar. Not a strong agreement longer term, must say, in that warmer pattern. Definitely more of a westerly flow dominated here, so less of a European high, but has got that spike in upper air temperatures into next week. So definitely a little bit of a cooler pattern here from the ECMWF. Not quite as optimistic with that European high. I suspect that's what the difference is. That European high is not as hot and persistent, and that just means everything's slightly cooler. Air masses aren't quite as warm and not quite as much activity, and the westerly flow is stronger. That's why precipitation is higher. So I suspect that's the difference here. This is why this run is slightly cooler and more unsettled. So we'll have to wait and see, but regardless, it is looking hot next weekend. A lot of unsettled conditions come this week and potentially longer term as well. But those unsettled conditions longer term could be more in the way of thunderstorms and persistent rain. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.